Rich is going to join us to tell you all about our adventures a couple weeks ago when we got the chance to go out to Jacob's Well, Wimberley, and then got to camp for the weekend at Canyon Lake out by North Park. So, Jacob's Well, what is it? According to Wikipedia, it's a karstic spring. Had never heard of a karstic spring. Have you guys heard of one?
I've heard of a karst before related to caves, but not directly related to a spring.
This is a new word for me entirely. I have no clue.
Okay, so I thought it meant that it's like water, like it's bringing up groundwater.
No, I think that's what artesian means. Not to be confused with artisan.
Okay, what is artesian?
It's just water that flows from the ground, I believe.
So then what's karstic?
Karstic is a geological feature. And so when I looked it up, it has to do with the fracturing of bedrock and aquifers.
So are you saying Wikipedia is wrong?
No, it's right, because it can be both.
Okay.
They can be two adjectives that describe Jacob's Well.
So Jacob's Well is both a karstic and artesian spring out by Wimberley, Texas.
Yes. And if you say that it's from San Marcos, people on Reddit will be very upset.
I didn't know that was a thing, but
Yeah.
good to know. So it essentially it's a place where you can go and I would describe, if somebody were to ask me, I would say it's both it's the spring. For me, the three of us will talk about it. We each had a different experience. For me, it was a spring with cool water, really cold water. I don't feel like it ever got like comfortable. And it was a good place to relax and hang out with friends.
Yeah, I think the word you're looking for is a swimming hole.
Ah, okay. But can you call it a swimming hole when it was like 2 feet deep?
Well, except for the well itself. And yes.
All right. Well, tell me about the well, Jarrett.
I mean, it's 20 to 30 feet deep. It runs into Texas's second longest cave, underwater cave system, that is. It's something like 1,400 feet long once you get under, and the water is actually like 72 degrees all year round. So that's why it never warmed up for you, because the water that comes up, the artesian water that comes up, is actually just 72 degrees. So it's going to stay like that until it runs off and meets up further, like downstream in Blue Hole and stuff, or as it runs to the next river. It'll take a while for, it just to get warm.
But it's also a great place just to sit and meditate. So, Rich, can you tell us about your experience?
Oh yeah, that's exactly what I was doing. So I didn't end up getting into the water at all. I actually just kind of watched everybody else have fun out in the cold water. Um, but no, it's a pretty quiet place. Even though there was enough people there to make it somewhat crowded, it didn't really get too loud or anything like that. So it's a perfect opportunity if you want to get some beautiful scenery out there in nature, read a book, maybe journal a little bit. I think I actually saw somebody out there that was journaling.
I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah. Different vantage points to do it too. Right there by the water, you can get your feet wet while you're reading a book or just, hanging out. There's also a little bit of a cliffside. I saw some people hanging up there, taking photos and whatnot. So,
Yeah, but if you want to dip your toes in there or dive in there in any sort of way, you need to make sure you get a reservation
Correct.
to do that. And so the reservations fill up really fast. Jarrett, what are the months you can actually reserve a spot for the swimming hole?
I think it's April to September.
Okay, and they each cost $9 for adults. They have discounts depending on whether you live in the area or you're a senior, etc. So please go to the Hays County website for more details regarding pricing and reservations. At this time, as of September 2021, all the reservations are out. It's fully booked. You can't reserve to swim there.
Yeah.
But that's even if you want to dip your toes or do anything like that, because when we got there, the first thing they do is if you have a reservation, they put a stamp on your hand, to make sure that's how they identify that you did reserve ahead of time.
And then we didn't mention, but Jacob's Well is actually in a self-named place called Jacob's Well Nature Area, and it's free to go there. They have some hiking trails you can walk by, as Linda was mentioning, and also Rich, and look at the well itself. You just can't touch the water. So free to go. You can go explore. You just can't touch the water if you go out there and don't have a reservation.
All right, so my experience visiting Jacob's Well, I tried taking some notes and I wrote down that it was cloudy skies. It was like Labor Day weekend, so still plenty hot in Texas. And I just kept expecting this water to warm up, and it never did. Even after diving in, making like getting completely wet, I feel like it never got warm enough.
It doesn't. It stays at 72 degrees
Yeah,
because it's fresh water coming out of the aquifers.
so if you run cold, it stays cold. Some people might find it completely comfortable and just a great temperature to be at. I was not one of those people. But it is very clear water. I did enjoy that. Like you get to see down, and it's not deep at all if you're not like in the hole itself.
Yeah, it's not.
And so it's like you don't need to know how to swim. You can just be out there and enjoying being in the water a bit. So I had a good time hanging out with friends and watching people dive into the well itself, and just hanging out. I felt like the 2 hours was more than enough time. It did feel a little too peoply for me. Maybe I'm more on the antisocial side. I don't know, but it felt a little crowded for me.
Well, it wasn't bad at first.
Right, but then as the day got progressed, it felt more crowded because you have those people that are only hiking, just lurking.
Yeah. Well, then also people showed up to our 2-hour time slot. They were also supposed to be there. They just weren't on time.
Is that what it was?
Yeah. All
Okay.
those people were supposed to be there because you get different colored hand stamps, I believe, with the time, and they just showed up late.
Yeah, I couldn't tell whether they were supposed to be there at the same time as us, and maybe there were just too many people that had reserved at the same time.
I mean, maybe, but they all looked pretty legit about needing to be there.
Okay. So yeah, it felt a little crowded for me, but we got there early enough where we were able to claim our spot and our space, and therefore had good time just hanging out when we weren't freezing.
What did the well itself look like, Linda?
Blue and black.
What did the bottom look like?
From my perspective, very limited 1 second perspective, when I was looking at it, it looked black. I remember seeing like a black hole in there.
Oh, okay. And then for me, I spent, I guess, some time swimming over it, and I jumped into it. So I saw a look at the bottom. I took a little bit of video. There's 2 jump spots. There's a lower one where you can actually see where you're going in. That's pretty easy to do. And there's a higher one where you have to jump over the lower one. And so you can't see the water where you're trying to aim for. So a little bit more dangerous, but it's not that high. I think 10 feet or so.
I will say it definitely did look deep. I remember distinctly remembering that as I looked over one of the ledges, like, oh my gosh, I don't want to drop my phone into there because there's no way I'm getting that back out.
Yeah, it'd be a tough go. You'd have to have someone jump in and hope they could swim down because 20 to 30 feet's no joke. Just to have no gear on and swim down there.
Definitely not. They do warn against that on the Hays County website. Say that it's you need to make sure that you are a proper scuba diver if you intend on going deep into the well itself.
Yeah. If you have fins on and goggles, you could probably get down there pretty easy. But like everyone's going out there for leisure swims, so no one's like prepped to get down to the bottom. So if you drop your stuff, it's gonna stay there a while, I'm sure, unless you just have a super swimmer friend that's there at the time.
So next we went over to Wimberley and ate at the Wimberley Cafe. It seems like the 3 of us had different experiences and will speak differently as to our experiences there. I enjoyed the fact that we had...
Well, hold on.
Okay.
What was the first thing we did when we got there to Wimberley Cafe?
Struggled to find parking?
No, at Wimberley Cafe.
You had a mimosa.
They had the outside tent with mimosas.
Right. And
Yeah.
so Jared had one of those mimosas, and
Did you have one too?
Oh, I definitely had one, and the mixture or the part ratio was amazing.
Yeah, they had a lot of champagne or sparkling wine to juice. So it was I guess a hookup. They were fairly pricey, but they made sure to make it count.
ooh, good point, Jared. Good
Yeah.
point on that.
So while you're waiting, you can get mimosas or water.
For sure. And it was a 45-minute wait, but to be fair, it was Labor Day weekend.
Yeah, it was a holiday, so I'm sure that slowed things down.
Right. And it is during pandemic times, and we were trying to be mindful of that. All of us are vaccinated, so we felt a little bit more protected. And we're willing to take an outdoor space, but we ended up actually in an indoor corner space. And there were, how many of us were there?
7?
I want to say 9, but I don't know.
We were a large group at a round table in a corner of the restaurant.
Yeah.
And the waiter was busy.
Extremely.
Yeah.
He was the guy who gave us our mimosas and was our waiter for some reason, so he was running the mimosa tent.
Right. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I had geez, I don't even remember what I ended up having there.
Good. It was memorable then.
I think I had a burger. I just had a burger.
You had a burger.
Because
yeah.
I'm just vanilla like that. I just had a burger and fries, and I had some coffee, and no complaints on my part. It was all perfectly good.
I had a chicken fried steak and mashed potatoes. There was no gravy on the mashed potatoes. Limited on the chicken fried steak. It was okay, but I wouldn't say it was that great on this trip.
I had a what's it called? Like a Swiss burger. You know what I'm talking about?
I remember us talking about what you had, but I don't
Yeah.
remember now.
I mean, it was a variation of a hamburger, and it was pretty good. It did take a little while for our waiter to get my drink out, but again,
yeah.
like it was a busy weekend.
Yeah.
There was a lot of people.
Yeah, I think overall, like, we ended up spending like 2 hours there. And it was,
Yeah,
I mean,
possibly. I mean, it took up the majority of our time because our check-in at the campsite was at 3:00, and we could essentially go over there as soon as we were finished. So it did take quite a bit of time.
I guess what I liked about it is that it had a great selection. So even though all of us, there was a large group of us, we all found something we thought we would enjoy from the menu.
Yeah, all fried.
Okay, yeah, Jared has his perspective on that. And we had a good time. We had great company. Really enjoyed it.
Okay, but did you try the fried mac and cheese?
I didn't. I just had the fried pickles.
Okay, you missed out if you didn't try that fried mac and cheese.
Yeah, everyone said that it was really amazing. So I guess if you go to Wimberley Cafe, just eat a meal of fried mac and cheese
With the mimosa.
with a mimosa.
All right, so now we can talk about our camping experience. After eating at Wimberley Cafe, we headed over to North Park at Canyon Lake, and we knew the check-in was at 3 p.m., so it was sometime around 3:30 or 4 when we ended up checking in. And what North Park is, it's a series of 20 primitive campsites, and that means that there's no water spigots or restroom facilities or types of that nature attached to the campsite themselves. But there are 3 spots where you will have water spigots where you can get some water, fresh, clean water, and as well as, Jarrett, what's the name for those restrooms they had there?
They're pit toilets.
Pit toilets, yeah. They have pit toilets
Is there
as
only
well.
one? I just know we went to the one. Is there more than one at that location, or is that it?
I'm not sure.
Okay. I think so. When we drove down to the water, I didn't see any more.
Yeah, I didn't see any more either.
And neither did I.
Okay. So probably just that one. So in the men's, it was one pit toilet, one urinal, and a sink. I
Right.
think.
And we got campsites 1 and 2, so we were right closer to the restrooms and
Yeah.
the spigots. So we can't really speak to others.
Yeah. So we were away from the water. And if you're down closer towards 20, that's actually where there's a beach in Canyon Lake for swimming. It's kind of blocked off. It's like a no wake zone, no boats. So you're a little bit safer.
Yeah, and so the draw to that is that you're closer to the water, but you're further from the restroom and from the spigot.
Yeah. And there's also no day use at the park. They only allow admittance to those who have a campsite and are camping overnight.
So make sure that you reserve online because I'm pretty sure those campsites are reserved pretty fast for every weekend.
I'm sure.
Yeah, and how much was that a night?
They are $12 a night for a campsite.
Right. So we reserved 2 so that we could hang out with our friends. We rented out spots 1 and 2.
Yeah. And I'm sure, like most primitive campsite, there is a tent limit. Not necessarily a person limit, but you can only have so many tents per campsite.
And there were how many of us? 1, 2, 3. There were 5 of us, and we had 3. We had how many tents? 1, 2,
We had
3, 4.
4.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's generally, I don't know about there specifically, but generally most places, at least as far as Texas goes, like state parks, it's 4 tents per campsite, sometimes less. So I imagine we would have been like at the limit right there at 4.
Yeah, and currently there's a fire ban, but you can still build a fire in like as long as it's covered by the
And their fire ring.
right in their fire ring essentially. And
Yeah.
there's even firewood for you to grab there.
Yes.
So, that's all I can think of as far as logistics go.
Yeah, that's about it.
Can y'all think of anything else?
It's not a very big park. It's also located right next to Canyon Dam, and if you walk over Canyon Dam, there's Overlook Park.
Right, and we'll talk about that a little bit more in a bit.
I don't know, maybe I'm biased with not wanting to go into the water myself, but I actually really liked our location, being, further away from the beach. But campsite 1 and 2 had this nice little alcove where we were just basically surrounded by trees. We didn't have to really worry about any of the other campsites.
Yeah, that's true. 1 and 2 are kind of in the edge. Also, we didn't mention there's a lot of cliffs until you get down to the beach area. So we were kind of at the highest point, with cliffs overlooking the water. Small amount of trees. If you want a cliff jump, you shouldn't because the park says don't do it. But there's a fence up to make it even harder. We did, however, see some people boat up to the cliffs and jump that way. So I guess they knew where to go and were able to check it out from below. But the park says no cliff jumping, and they put up obstacles to make it harder.
Right, and I think, yeah, it all depends on your perspective because, not gonna lie, when I saw our campsites, I thought as a true crime fan, I was like, oh my god, a murder could easily sneak up on us. So I'm partial to those sites where I'm closer to people that are camping near me. Although you could argue that, yeah, those same people could also come and get you. So it doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, no, yeah, I would go by Rich's advice. All right, so at North Park, at Canyon Lake, we got there, I would say by the time we got to the campsite, it was around 4 for Jared and me. Oh my god, like the guy at the before we go into that, at the gate or the entrance, we were the ones that made the reservations, Jared and I. But the guy asked us, like, who did you reserve with? And my first, like, inclination was to say our friends' first names. And then he asked me our friends' last names, which gave me all the anxiety for some reason. And I just blanked out and couldn't remember any of our friends' last names. But anyway, once we got through that, which I still don't get why we would be asked that because the reservations were under our, Jared's name. But anyway.
I don't think he cared, Linda. I think he was just trying to be personable.
So then we drove over to our campsite and found that our friends had already arrived. So they arrived before we did. There were 3 of them. So they got to set up in campsite 1.
Well, they were starting.
Yeah, they were starting to. And we got to set up in campsite 2 just to make sure that we
didn't have to.
We didn't have to, but we were like, let's do it here. That way people know not to like approach or not to
Also shade.
Yeah, it had shade, and we knew people would be less likely to approach our side or start encroaching on our area. Yeah, if we set up our tent there. So we set it up. It all took about an hour because according to Jared, I'm high maintenance and I like to glamp.
Yes.
I don't have a dog in this fight.
Linda likes to glamp, even though she just calls it camping.
And even though Jared gets me all the toys for glamping, but okay. So we set up our campsite,
Hmm.
all of us, and so we then, even though we didn't have to, it's not far away. We drove to the
Well, we didn't really know at the
yeah, we
time.
didn't know at the time, but
It's a
it's
hindsight, just 2020
yeah.
kind of situation.
If you drive over from campsites one and two to the lake itself, it'll take you 1 minute at most to drive there. You could walk.
Half a mile or less, I would say,
Right.
down to that little beach area that we mentioned earlier.
Yeah, for sure. And there's places there for you to set up your chairs or your towels, etc.
It's real rocky,
It
so
is.
be advised about that. It's super rocky. They're somewhat sharp, and
Right.
so even into the water, so that's to be expected. So it's a real rocky and foot pain kind of area if you're not wearing any shoes, water shoes, that kind of thing.
For sure. Thank you, Jared, for bringing that up, because
Yeah.
you do need to make sure you're wearing some. I would recommend some water shoes for that lake.
Or just be prepared. You know,
Right.
I didn't wear shoes, and it was okay.
Yeah, I'm a big baby. I would have continued to wear my water shoes if I would have gone in there deeper.
Mm.
But Rich and I just hung out. Really, I did not feel like going any more into the water for that day. I was done after Jacob's well.
Yeah, just standing by the lake, it was actually really beautiful. The landscape, it was before sunset,
Mhm.
and I know you're going to talk about that later. But honestly, the view was amazing. You really get a good view across the lake and seeing all the different houses out there.
Yeah. And then so myself and two other people went out into the lake. I guess it's known for scuba diving. It's supposed to be fairly clear. Two of us wore goggles in, and you can kind of see the bottom. I mean, it wasn't anywhere near as clear as Jacob's Well was.
It doesn't help that there's like a ton of boats in the area.
I don't know that boats cause lake to be less clarity. I think it has to do with water and silt running in from the rivers that it comes with. So, but Canyon Lake is, I guess, supposed to be pretty clear as far as lakes go. So there were a group of scuba divers out there doing whatever it is that they do underwater, having a good time, I assume. And then we just hung out there. I actually spent most of my time just trying to stand on large rocks because the ground was sharp, like I said earlier, and I wasn't in shoes. And I went under a couple times, couldn't really see anything but at the bottom. But it's a little bit warmer than Jacob's Well was, probably closer to 80 degrees at this point in the summer in the shallow area. I'm sure, as you go down and deeper out further, it's not quite the same. So that's what it was like swimming. It's quite a bit of area blocked off that you can swim in. You can go out pretty far, probably over 100 feet from the shoreline, so you can get fairly deep from there. And you're in the dam area, so that probably goes down to at least 100 feet if you wanted to do that and you were brave enough to fight the boats. So overall, neat little blocked off area to spend your time. Much warmer water, and there was quite a few people out there enjoying it when we were down there.
So after swimming or meditating or just talking out at Canyon Lake, we came back to our campsites. I actually used a camp shower to take a shower while others were making preparations for dinner.
Or just setting up in general. I think that's what a lot of people were doing, just getting ready and getting prepared for dinner and stuff.
Yeah, I felt a bit icky after Jacob's well, and so I just had to have a camp shower, so that's what I did. Then we went over. Jarrett and I went over to look at the sunset.
Yeah. We went to Canyon Dam. There's a small parking lot right outside of North Park. And Canyon Dam is just the dam for Canyon Lake. And it's also part of Overlook Park, which is on the other side from North Park. So if you also want to spend time at a park at Canyon Lake, you can go over there, and it's day use only, sunrise to sunset.
Yeah, and it's just a really nice area. We got to see what we decided. Well, first, Jared and I did see a small fox, right?
Fox,
Or was
yeah.
it a coyote?
I mean, it was either a large fox or a young coyote.
So later on, we decided that we saw a foxy coyote.
Yeah, this was on the drive out of the park to go park in the parking lot.
Right. And we saw that, and then we went over to the dam itself. beautiful sight.
Mm-hmm.
This beautiful sunset. Hays County Sheriff will kick you out very loudly, though, as soon as the sun sets.
Correct, because it's sunrise to sunset park, so they're pretty serious about getting you off the dam and out of the park as soon as sunset happens. So they had a police cruiser out there, and they, put it over the PA system like, leave now.
Right. They're not shy about it at all. So we very promptly left the premises of the dam, got back into our vehicle, and came back into our campsite where Rich and our other friends had remained. What did you all do in the meantime?
Yeah, well, meanwhile, myself and the others, we were busy either setting up camp, setting up our tents, or trying to get the fajitas going. And we struggled a little bit, I think. It took a little while to get that fire started.
Yeah.
What kind of fire was it?
Charcoal.
Charcoal.
Okay.
Yeah, he used charcoal and one of the standard camp box grills that are in most parks and even outside of our house in the little HOA area.
Oh, that's right. Because we were using the grill fire, the grilled the fire. What do you call it? Where you just make a fire?
The fire ring?
Yeah, the fire. We were using the fire ring
For fire.
for fire. Yes,
Yeah,
thank you. But
yeah.
also to make the tortillas.
Correct. That came much later, though. Like an hour or two later.
All right. Anyway.
We really did set that fire a little too early. We went through our firewood pretty quickly.
Yeah, we did. Yeah, we did.
All right. So once Jared and I arrived back, there was still, I remember, fajita prepping being done. Right? Is that correct?
Yes.
So we prepped. So
We
really,
didn't.
our friend,
Our
friend kept prepping the fajitas and making the fajitas for us, and our other friends were helping with the tortillas.
Mm-hmm.
And Jared and I were just there, looking pretty, I guess.
Yep.
Eventually, we got to have some really nice vegetables and fajitas for dinner, right?
Yeah, they were pretty good. Our chef did a good job.
Definitely.
Yeah.
It was all cast iron cooked, not directly on the grill, if that matters to anyone at all.
It was really good.
Yeah.
Really good meal. Our friend really outdid themselves, and the tortillas were great too.
Yeah, HEB butter tortillas. So if you're looking for some solid tortillas, they're definitely worth trying.
Highly recommend them. And after that, we enjoyed the fajitas and helped put away, and then we just sat around the fire like our ancient ancestors did.
Yep.
Now, I actually don't really remember too much of sitting around the fire because I don't know if you noticed. I was nodding off. It's already been a long day at this point.
Yeah, it had been.
Yeah.
So no one stayed up too much later.
We didn't stay too late. Yeah.
It was like an hour or two tops after fajitas.
Right. We just tried having conversations. I remember something about talking about it, like our TV shows at some point. But at that, we didn't even get to. We had talked about doing s'mores. We didn't even get to do that. We were all just tired, wiped from the day.
I think someone ate s'more components, or at least the chocolate. But I think that's as far as it got.
Yeah. Right. That makes sense. And then we went to our campsites, and we were a little fearful that some of our neighbors would keep their generators and music on.
Yeah, but I don't remember it happening.
Yeah, same here. It's like at 11 for some reason. I don't know if the park made them or they themselves were good neighbors and they just turned it all off. And
you had a different experience, right?
So from what I saw, they actually had one of those blow up projector screens. It was either blow up or it wasn't.
They did. They had
a projector.
They had a sheet and a projector, at least in an awning tent. So I remember seeing that before. At least in the morning, I think I remember seeing it set up.
I'm pretty sure what ended up happening was their movie ended. So then they shut down.
Ah, okay. Yeah, I remember seeing what looked like a projector set up, I think in the morning, but I didn't remember seeing it on.
I can't speak to any of it. I was just so wiped out that I just fell asleep and remembered at some point waking up at the night thinking, oh, there's no loud sounds. That's great. And fell back asleep. So we got through the night quietly, and at some point we hear our alarm for the day, which was a dog barking.
Multiple.
Okay, multiple
There was
dogs
dog
barking.
battles between 2 different campsites.
Right, and so I thought maybe only Jared and I had heard it, so I started to get up and go to the restroom. As I'm getting up to go to the restroom, I realized Rich is coming out of the restroom.
Yeah, no, I'm glad that it wasn't just me, because this was like 6:30 in the morning.
I didn't hear it that early. More around 7:38. Between 7 and 8 for me is when it finally got to me.
I think you're a sound sleeper.
Yeah, I can be.
Yeah, he was asleep even when I got up. So that's why, like, but I remember as I was getting up to go, you were coming back. So I know Rich for sure heard it before we did.
Yeah.
Right. So the dog woke us up. So once we were all up, we just started making breakfast.
Mhm. What did you make, Linda?
Using Jared's Coleman gas grill, fuel grill. Sorry, we had I made some bacon and egg tacos for breakfast, and also the HEB buttery tortillas.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they were really good. So that's what we used. Just those HEB buttered tortillas, bacon, and peppered bacon. It was peppered bacon and eggs.
I like the specifics.
Right. I'm just making, this is a pretty simple camp recipe. If you're out there looking for what to make, what to take, if you have a good cooler and to take the bacon in and you take some eggs and you have these great tortillas, really highly recommend just some bacon and egg tacos. They're really good.
Yeah.
And then we not wrapped up, but like basically wrapped up. Yeah. Put away our stuff. And then we called it a day. I don't know. Do y'all have anything else to add to our trip?
I feel like the MVP here was definitely those butter tortillas.
Yeah. And then for a final question, I believe this was the first time Rich had slept on any sort of mattress or camp pad.
This is true. This is true.
How did that change your experience?
I kept sliding off of it.
They are slick.
Yeah, that's... I found myself waking up more frequently just trying to make sure that I was still on it.
Thank you for saying that. I had the same experience, and Jared made me seem like a noob.
So does that mean you would not use a sleep pad in the future?
It just means that I'd probably find a way to like duct tape it down so it doesn't like slide around everywhere. Yeah.
So was it because your tent was on a incline, or were you pretty flat and still just slipping around?
I think I just move around when I sleep.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, guys, that wraps up our experience over at Jacob's Well, Wimberley Cafe, and at Canyon Lake. We hope that you have enjoyed this podcast. And we also want to thank Richie for joining us for this session.
Well, thank you for having me. I really enjoyed being here.
And we would like to thank you for joining us both for that adventure as well, and now for recording this podcast and sharing with our listeners this experience. If you'd like to listen or learn more about our experiences throughout Texas and beyond, make sure to follow us on Facebook or Instagram. We are at Adventures with BG. Those are the letters B and G.
And we'd really appreciate it if you like the episode, if you could give us a 5-star review. It helps us in rankings and helps us get more viewership or listenership.
And as always, stay safe as you wander into the woods.